Can Florida State pull off a few shocking flips again this cycle and make things interesting down the stretch? We talked about Florida State being hot on the recruiting trail early on for the 2025 cycle. Talked about a lot of the key positions and targets that they sit in a good spot for. But some of these recruits we talked about are going to require Florida State to pull off some upsets and flip them from their current program. And there's quite a few flip targets out there, even a couple 5-stars. So let's talk about them. Now we'll start off with 5-star tight end Elias Williams, who is currently committed to his in-state school, the Georgia Bulldogs. So automatically going to be a tough pull, especially considering the success that they've had with tight ends. But if you remember, Florida State pulled off a flip last cycle with top tight end commit Landon Thomas, who was a 5-star committed to the UGA for a while. Now, there are definitely some similarities in this recruitment, but that doesn't mean that's going to be an easy pull by any means. Now, honestly, he seemed fairly comfortable in his pledge to UGA, but Florida State is not going down without a fight. And by all accounts, Florida State has the best chance of anybody to flip him despite a push from other schools like Miami. Now, he's been on campus multiple times in the last few months and is expected back at the end of the month for that big June 21st weekend that we've all been talking about. That is his last scheduled official visit as it sits right now, and even a good bit after his official visit to Georgia. So Florida State's in a prime position with the last official, the last impression, and I like that it's not immediately following the Georgia visit. Can give that one some time to wear off. Of course, I'm not predicting a flip, but he does have a lot of love for Florida State, it seems, so that one could get interesting down the stretch, especially if Florida State goes out and impresses on the field again in 2024. Now here's a fun one with 4-star defensive lineman Jaylen Wiggins, who we've talked about a lot here on this channel. And I think this is probably the most likely flip on this list. He's currently committed to the Florida Gators, but he's from Tallahassee and keeps finding his way back to Florida State pretty much every other weekend, it seems. I think he's even going to be there this weekend again. Now, I think Florida State's addition of Ernie Sims to the recruiting staff is actually big in this recruitment specifically, because as a recruit, Sims was in a similar situation, from the Tallahassee area, but kind of wanted to go somewhere new. Luckily, he decided to stay local, sign with the Noles, and that was all she wrote. So I think with Wiggins being in that same spot, kind of contemplating the same decision, I think Ernie Sims can be a huge connection there and help sway Wiggins back to the good guys. And I think it'll be a lot easier if Florida disappoints on the field again in 2024, like we think they will. He will also be in Tallahassee on the 21st, and the Noles will get the last crack at him as well, so we'll just have to see what shakes out in that one. Now another defensive lineman, Justice Terry, who is a 5-star, top 10 player in the country according to the 247 composite rankings. This has been an interesting recruitment, and I'm sure it still has plenty of twists and turns left in it as with most 5-star recruitments. He was originally committed to Georgia, but ended up flipping to USC, which I honestly thought was a bit weird, but he seems pretty impressionable, so again, I think there's a lot more drama left in this one. He did take his official visit to Georgia last weekend, and I do still think Georgia is a strong contender here, if not still actually being the front runner. I think this one is a little bit of a long shot for the Noles, but they will definitely get their chance to make their case as well. He takes his official visit to Florida State on the 14th of this month. Now, I'd really like to see him come in for that big June 21st weekend, since that one will have a lot more buzz, but he'll be going back to USC that weekend. Now, I do think that Florida State is a top school for him, but I'd say they're running a close third at this point. But again, I think he is impressionable, and he's been at Florida State a bunch, and at one point I actually felt pretty good about Florida State's chances. So maybe they can get him on campus again, make another surge, and make this recruitment interesting. Moving on to Duke Johnson, a composite 5-star player. They have him listed as a linebacker, but I think he projects as a safety at the next level. This is a kid that was actually trending to Florida State earlier in this cycle, but a good visit to Alabama kind of swung momentum the other way, and they did ultimately gain his commitment. He took an unofficial visit to Florida State back in April, and I think he will be scheduling an official visit sometime in the summer or maybe later in the season. Unfortunately, I do think Florida State has slipped here for one reason or another, but I don't think that they're completely out of it. I think they'll get another shot if they can get him back on campus, but it seems like they're definitely not going down easy. Now, the last flip target we're going to cover here in this one is 4-star safety Tony Williams, who is currently a UCF commit. But, typically Florida State should be able to flip a guy from UCF if they make a big enough push. And I think that's the case here. I think the DB/safety board is a little bit weird this cycle, and I think it's kind of developing a little bit later in the cycle compared to last year, meaning that I think Florida State is still figuring out who is on their DB board and which players they covet the most. Now, I know that they're actively recruiting Lagonza Hayward, Ladarian Clardy, and others, but I think Tony Williams is up there as well, and at really any point, they could decide to push and greenlight him and probably get in the flip. Now, that moment could come during his official visit to Tallahassee this weekend. I'd say no matter what happens after this weekend, we'll know just how badly the staff wants him and also how serious he is about Florida State. So we're definitely keeping an eye out on that one also. There's definitely quite a few other flip targets out there, but as of right now, I think these are the most pressing and the most likely. Of course, as we get further into the cycle, kids start actively committing, start flipping. June and July are typically the biggest months for all the recruiting drama, so we're just getting started, and this board is bound to change in the meantime. I know the staff is also actively going after a couple of Clemson defensive line commits, so there's still lots of dominoes left to fall, and we'll be right here ready to talk about it all with you guys. We appreciate you guys tuning in and watching the video. If you enjoyed, definitely drop a like and hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out a ton, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Go Noles.